So on January 6th of this year, WWE Raw, the flagship show, the A show, or so they would have us believe, debuts on Netflix, and everyone pretends it's a big deal. Nobody, aside from the hater, as far as I know, wants to call this for what it is. A demotion, right? This is a step in the wrong direction. The only way this is a success is if Raw were to multiply their viewership, given that now they are in over 300 million homes. Not people, but accounts, I believe. So with that being said, what has changed? Well, before this Raw, that previous year's WrestleMania, when Triple H, aka Paul Levesque, which is what I'm calling this asshole from now on, when he takes the reins and Stephanie McMahon Levesque comes out and she declares that it is now the Paul Levesque era. Everybody who's smart realized that shit was about to hit the fan. Things were gonna get worse and worse. And Triple H justifiably has gotten a lot of flack. In addition, The Rock, Dwayne Johnson himself, has also gotten a significant amount of flack for the fact that these two narcissists think that they understand what wrestling is. I think now, beyond a reasonable doubt, we know that only Vince McMahon in the history of wrestling, and perhaps Vince Russo from a creative standpoint, understand the medium of wrestling. Quite frankly, Vince McMahon invented it, and if I'm being honest, in my personal opinion, wrestling in its prime and as it's meant to be was also invented somewhat by Vince Russo, who fundamentally understood what people want. That's what it comes down to. Triple H and The Rock have no idea what people want. They are talent. They are not creatives. They are the guy that the creative says, hey, now you're going to go out and you're going to do this. Now, maybe they're creative with their words, but this does not mean that they are people who have creative juices beyond their promos, right? Especially The Rock, because he's known for his promos. Triple H, he cuts the same promo for about 15 years. But anyways, it's not here nor there, cucks. The point is, right, that in this circle jerk, right, in this fucking game of hot potato, we got another cocksuck that's thrown his hat into the ring. And this guy is called Lee Fitting. I'll never forget the first time that I saw WWE Raw end with a producer's credit, which in my opinion is a classic error. Number one, it's narcissistic. And number two, more importantly, it really takes you out of the show, right? You cannot have a show with surprises when you consistently acknowledge that there are people behind the screens pulling the strings. I'll say it again. Wrestling, insofar as the presentation of it goes, the one that was perfected by the Vinces, McMahon and Russo, is supposed to kind of exist as this detached universe from the real world, right? Everything happens within the 2 hours or 3 hours of Raw and the 2 or 3 hours of SmackDown, depending on the context. That's just how it is, and that's how it should be. In other words, if back in the day it's 10:55, right? That means that Kurt Angle or whoever is on TV has about 10 minutes to get his revenge on whoever wronged him. Beyond that, he's got to wait until next week because the world of wrestling suspends itself and then resumes at the next episode. That's how it's supposed to be. It's not supposed to be this storyline that bleeds into reality, right? There's not supposed to be an authority figure behind the scenes that says and dictates what's going to happen. This is part of the suspension of disbelief. It's as simple as that. It is unbelievable that wrestling would operate the way it does, but you suspend it because the people that are in charge make sure to stay behind the screens. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Hater, Vince McMahon is notorious for making himself a character. Yes, but that character is different. Pretty much every Vince McMahon storyline centers around the philosophy that Vince McMahon cannot control his own company. You see what I'm saying? Vince McMahon has to go out there and be an authoritarian monarch-type motherfucker to stop the inmates from running the asylum, to stop Stone Cold from doing what he wants. And often, basically every time when the story ends, Vince McMahon is left beaten, bruised, and a loser. Now, it's one thing to acknowledge that Triple H is in charge. I think that's also a horrible idea. Fine, he's the executive producer. It is what it is. If he's that much of a megalomaniac that he wants to have his name as the last thing that people see, which, by the way, sets a new precedent, because it's like, what's next? You're going to have credits? You're going to have credits roll? You know, when Vince McMahon was in charge, it never said produced by Vince McMahon. You just knew it, and you just pretended to forget about it, right? After all, it would be weird if Vince McMahon is getting stunned in the middle of the ring, and Stone Cold is pouring beers over him, and then, like, JR says, see you next week, folks! And then after that, you see, like, produced by Vince McMahon. Oh, the guy that just got his ass kicked? He's in charge of this? Why would he do this, right? It takes you out of it. But again, if Triple H is in charge and they're going to acknowledge the Paul Levesque era, which in my opinion they should have never done, right? Like, Vince McMahon never came out, like, breaking character and said, I'm in charge. He was always the character of Mr. McMahon. Paul Levesque is not a character. Paul Levesque literally is just the boss who just shows up. Like, he's not a character within the plot of the show. You see what I'm saying? This would be like if it's time for, I don't know, the Browns versus the Raiders in the NFL, and the fucking commissioner comes out and says, hey everyone, I made this match. I produced this show. Shut the fuck up. Just play the damn game. You know what I mean? Now again, it's one thing for Triple H to do this because he's Triple H. But the keen observer would have noticed that when the producer credit appeared on the bottom of our screens, everyone was like, oh, look, executive producer Paul Levesque. And then immediately after, literally everyone watching that knows how to read said, wait a second, who the fuck is Lee Fitting? Who is Lee Fitting? And how the fuck did he manage to become the number 2 in the credits? Where did this guy come from? And why is he number 2? Now I understand, you know, there could be many reasons for this. Maybe he's a TKO guy, and TKO's like, look, we're going to throw in Lee Fitting in here to make sure that things go the way that we want, right? Because they're the shareholders, and fundamentally, they have some pull through their board of directors, right? I could sit here and explain to everyone how corporate law works, but for both of our sakes, let's not go down that route, right? So anyways, he could be like a TKO guy, but he could be a WWE guy. Quite frankly, it doesn't matter who he is, right? My concern is not so much with who Lee Fitting is, aside from the fact that this begs the question of who the fuck is Lee Fitting, right? The real mystery is, why are there these nobodies who we've never heard of before, like, in charge of wrestling? People got mad at Dixie Carter, who actually was a creative to an extent and who was a performer. She would come out there like in a Vince McMahon role and actually contribute. But nobody is mad at Lee Fitting, except for the hater and his fans, of course. Then we got other people like Nick Khan. Remember him? What the fuck is that all about, by the way? All of a sudden, one day, people are like, Nick Khan said this. And I'm like, oh, wait a second. I think his name is Tony Khan, actually. Turns out there's another Khan, motherfucks. This one is in WWE, and he has a lot of pull. What the fuck is Nick Khan? Who is this asshole? Why are the fucking executives of this company that have no bearing on the actual storyline that's being told being, like, revealed, and why do they have an opinion on what happens? Some things, unfortunately, are better as dictatorships or monarchies than they are as democracies. This does not apply to governments. Obviously, you know, autocrats are not good, right? Dictators are not good. But it does sometimes apply to business, and more importantly, it does apply to entertainment. Once you get too many chefs in the kitchen, and once Nick Khan starts thinking, wait a second, I have a great idea. Nobody cares. Nobody asked you, motherfucks. This would be like if someone went to like a random YouTuber like the hater and said, hey, what's your idea? Nobody asked me. I'll give it to you if you want, right? But I don't have any pull. Why does Nick Khan have pull? You see what I'm saying? Why does he have pull? If you want to hire someone who's like chief of, I don't know, catering, right? Hey, you have experience with catering? You know how to order a nice catering? Go ahead, be my guest. That's about it, motherfucks. I don't need anybody to be a creative when they're not creatives, right? Lee Fitting, as far as I understand, from what the people have told me, apparently he was some sort of executive and producer for ESPN. So maybe that explains some things, right? But fundamentally, it's like, we don't need this guy to do this, right? Wrestling operates on a different level. And the reality is that you do, to an extent, need fans of wrestling, because fans, the people that grew up with wrestling, seem to understand what wrestling is, right? You need fans in the creative department and, in my opinion, largely in executive positions. Like, it should be a no-brainer. The first prerequisite of getting a job doing anything for WWE is, how long have you been a fan? Now, if it's some obscure job, like you need a seamstress, and it's like, oh, we have no applications for seamstresses, right? So we're not going to ask if they're fans, then fine. But otherwise, think about how much a fan would benefit every position, right? Like McDonald's and other corporations have policies where they hire internally and they promote internally. So if you want to be like CEO, right, in some corporations, you have to start out as a grunt. Then you work your way up. Like, I think the CEO of fucking like UPS or FedEx or one of these guys, he started out as like a seasonal worker who would like just put packages together. Then, of course, he went and got his MBA. He's like a very brilliant guy, very accomplished guy, but he worked in UPS and moved up until people were like, oh, you're the most fit for this job because you understand the supply chain. You understand everything that happens. But nowadays, that's not what's happening. Now, granted, to be fair, right? You can't promote like fucking, I don't know. You can't promote, let's think of a wrestler who's like silly. You can't promote fucking, I don't know, Bubba Ray Dudley to like head of creative. You can't promote Bubba Ray Dudley to like, CFO, right? Because you need some skills that he may or may not have, right? I understand that. But with the creative roles, it should be fans. Not even wrestlers, it should be fans. It should be people that are like, yo, I've been watching wrestling all my life and I have some ideas, right? Like Juan Unda, one of the haters' fans, right? Like he has ideas, right? Hire him. He'd be a better fit than fucking Lee Fitting. He'd be more fitting than Lee Fitting. Cucks this. The reality is that nowadays they hire people based on like accomplishments in tangential fields, right? Every time this happens, it's a colossal disaster. Remember Mike Adamle? Mike Adamle apparently was some sort of successful sports broadcaster. Then shit hit the fan. Mike Adamle doesn't know Jeff Hardy's name, right? He would know his name if he were a fan. But he has to go, he has to learn, and of course he's gonna mess up. He's like, Jeff Harvey is gonna wrestle like somebody else. Jamaican me crazy, Kofi, right? He doesn't know what to say. All they told him is, Kofi Kingston is this guy, his gimmick is he's Jamaican. So he's like, oh shit, Jamaican me crazy, Kofi. How about have someone that knows, right? Like a great example would be Mauro Ranallo, right? Mauro is a respected broadcaster and clearly some sort of WWE fan. He knows the moves, he knows the wrestlers, he knows what the fuck is going on. Now, if the announcer can't do it, like look at Michael Cole. Mauro Ranallo's better than Michael Cole because he's actually a fan. Now, if the announcer can't do it, how do you expect someone to determine the direction of the business, especially the creative direction, if they have no experience in this? Lee Fitting might be an excellent producer of whatever the fuck he produced in ESPN, but he has no idea what a wrestling show looks like. Now, I could be wrong, and I will concede that it's possible that Lee Fitting could be a lifelong wrestling fan who finally got his dream job. And if that's the case, no problem, motherfucks. But I never heard of this motherfucker. You'd think that someone who's a lifelong fan and is invested in the concept of wrestling would be known to some degree. Like, for example, if I saw that it was like executive producers Paul Levesque and Dave Meltzer, like, first of all, I'd want to fucking blow my brains out, like just knowing that Dave Meltzer is now in charge. But I'd be like, all right, at the very least, Dave Meltzer understands wrestling more than the average person. He is a fan, right? I don't agree with him, but he's probably better for the job than like some random CEO who's like, the former CEO of Cinnabon or something. And that's how Lee Fitting feels. And this is indicative of the poisoning that is happening to this company that we all at one point loved. Some of us loved it a lot, like your boy. I loved it more than any other form of entertainment. I loved wrestling. I still love wrestling. But I don't love Lee Fitting, motherfucks. And furthermore, even if you want to do this, right? Even if you want to hire Lee Fitting, who am I to tell you no? You know what I mean? It's not my company. I'm not even a shareholder. But the idea is, if I were, I would have questions. not just about hiring Lee Fitting, but the presentation of Lee Fitting. Like, why the fuck do I know who Lee Fitting is now? Why is his name? Is he the second most important guy? What about the Koski kid and fucking Bruce Pritchard? Where do they rank in comparison to Lee Fitting? Why isn't one of them a producer? Why is it that everybody that sucks and doesn't understand wrestling keeps getting opportunities? Like, again, it's not just Lee Fitting. Look at Nick Khan. All of a sudden, like, people just know who this guy is. People are like, Nick Khan did this. Who the fuck is Nick Khan? Why did he get this position of power? Nick Khan, he's in charge. What? Like, you can say a lot about Tony Khan, right? He's a bad business person, in my opinion. However, he is a passionate wrestling fan. You know, he tries, and this is why I'm going to give AEW another chance. He tries to do what the people want. He doesn't know how to do it, but you can tell that when this idiot, Tony Khan, decides to sign FTR, he does it because he thinks the fans want to see FTR. He doesn't understand, of course, that it's a very minor, like, it's a minority of fans. It's a minor subsegment of a subsegment of people that give a shit about FTR. FTR fucking sucks. It's just two boring guys. Their tag team is, hi, we're boring. That's literally it. FTR, more like FBR, with the B standing for boring. These guys suck, you know? But think about it. At least he's trying. Everybody wants to see Edge wrestle, you know? He's not going to be WWE. Fine, AEW it is. Everybody wants to see Christian wrestle. Everyone wants to see Sting come back when he came back, right? And he did it. Tony Khan did that for us, and I got to give him some respect. What has Lee Fitting done? And Paul Levesque and Nick Khan. Oh, nobody gives a shit about Rusev, and they haven't for about 10, 15 years. I know. Let's sign Rusev and have him bore everyone to death every week. Some people call me God. No, they fucking don't. Go fuck yourself, Rusev. I'm tired of this asshole. I'm going to bring him up whenever I damn well please, by the way. So that's how it goes down, motherfucks. Who the fuck is Lee Fitting? Please tell me in the comments. Tell me what this guy's accolades are, what his accomplishments are, and furthermore, tell me why I should give a shit and why he merits to be the number 2 producer down the list. Who the fuck made this guy boss, man? Who decided to add his fucking name to the end credits? Vince leaves, never puts his name on the credit. Vince, the fucking asshole who created this. He invented wrestling. It was invented in the territories. Fuck the territories. Fuck New Japan. Fuck all Japan. Fuck old Japan. Fuck all companies that are not WWF and WWE. That's just the stark reality. Nobody in the world gives a shit about Ring of Honor. Nobody in the world gives a shit about like Big Japan Wrestling or Pro Wrestling Noah. Nobody knows. More like Pro Wrestling Noah because nobody knows what the fuck that is. Fuck all of that. Triple A, Hijo de Vikingo. It's like some 5'1" guy with a braid. He has hair like Tong Po from the Kickboxer. What the fuck is this guy? He's a little twerp, you know? Like the Triple A Mega Championship. It's just like 4 twerps fighting each other. Like 4 twerps. You could put like Scott Steiner there. He would destroy all 4 of these guys like 4-on-1 in a real life fight. I don't give a fuck who the champion is amongst these 4 jobbers. You know? But that's what the world has to offer. And soon, WWE will be able to offer the same thing. Mediocrity upon mediocrity. They've already started, motherfucks. And why? Because these egomaniacs don't understand the ultimate motto of WWE. Nobody is bigger than WWE. Not even Hulk Hogan, motherfucks. Lee Fitting's name has been seen on TV at this point. Like, in 5-10 years, if Lee Fitting continues, he will be like a name that has appeared on screen more times than Hulk Hogan. You know what I mean? It's unbelievable. Who the fuck is this guy? Vince McMahon creates it, builds it up to a billion-dollar business, a multi-billion-dollar business, then leaves only to tune in to his own show and see in the end executive producers Paul Levesque, aka zero contributions, aka complete detriment to wrestling, and Lee Fitting, who can only be described by the following phrase. Who in the blue hell is Lee fucking Fitting, motherfucks? And with that being said, thank you for watching this video. Thank you for watching my Resident Evil stream. And now you can go take the nearest object that you find, turn that sumbitch sideways and stick it straight up your candy asses.